I want to see a pension program that is given to every single veteran immediately upon release of the military. So if you serve 2 years, you get 2 years of pension right out, meaning
Mhm.
that you would get your base pay every month for 2 years with the
Mhm.
stipulation that you have to go and see a mental health provider once a month or you won't
Ooh.
get the benefit. And then once I joined the military, I would constantly go to sleep at night, like, wanting to be a girl. Like, it was, like, bad. Like, I every night, it was an incessant, unstoppable, like, just thought. But I didn't know, right? I didn't know what that was. I wasn't taught LGBTQ education. I didn't
Mhm.
know that what I was feeling was gender dysphoria. So if you are, like, an E3 or an E2, which is, like, lowest rank or one of the lower ranks in the military, you're making very little money. So what I would tell them is like, look, if you get out of the military after 4 years and you take the GI Bill, you're going to get E5 pay and housing benefits and go to school. And if you like the Navy, great, come back as an officer. Make them say no to you. Don't force them that you have to say yes to them.
Hey.
How are you?
Oh my goodness. I am so much better now that you're here.
Aw, you're so sweet.
Welcome in. How are you doing today?
I am doing good. I know my little birds on my end are really happy that
Oh,
you are doing this interview. So I know this is the first time that I've actually pulled up the stream and did something on stream during the workday. So it's kind of cool. It's all right. I'm not gonna get in trouble
okay.
because we're talking gender issues in the military, and part of my job is to talk about those things.
What do you do? That's so interesting.
Yeah, so I am the project manager for the National Center for Transgender Equality, and I run the US Transgender Survey.
Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to talk a lot more, I think.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely. A
That's
lot
so
more.
cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And also, your camera's not popping up on Discord. Is that
Oh,
normal? Oh, I see you.
hey
All
there.
right. Hey, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are
Yeah, you look great.
you?
Oh, I'm
Oh,
doing well.
wait.
What happened?
Me, I've asked you that like 3 times
Oh, God. Well, I'm doing well. So, you know what? Now that you've popped up on screen on my end, it's like you just asked me the question for the first time.
Perfect. Perfect.
So it's great.
Well, I am so glad I got to meet you on Amazon Lily. And catch
Oh
that
yeah.
you were in the military, the Navy specifically, right? You
Yes.
said until 2010?
Yes. So I did 2004 to 2010. I served in both Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. I was on the USS Ronald Reagan for 4 years, and I did nuclear power school for 2 years before that through the military. So I was a reactor operator. So glorified Homer Simpson. That was my job, quite literally. I was in charge of reactor safety.
That's pretty cool. It
Yeah.
Wow. So what got you, like, what made you want to go into the military? And how old were you when you decided to go into it?
Yeah, so I am a GOP child soldier. I got into the military. I'm a little loud. Hold on a second, pull back. Okay, so I joined the military because of patriotism of all things.
Oh, wow.
Because like I was born in conservative Texas and I was raised a Republican. And so I thought one of the best things that I could do was join the military because the town wasn't really hoping for people who looked like me to be going to colleges. So really the only options was like go to your local community college down the street or go into the military. So I walked into the Navy and I was like, give me the hardest intellectual job you got. And they said, okay, be a nuke. And I took the ASVAB, got in, and yeah, that's how I got into it. And I kind of wanted to get away from my hometown, but
Yeah.
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 But knowing what I know now as the leftist that I am, I would have never joined the military originally.
That's interesting because one of the reasons this piques my interest is so much is I wanted to go into the Navy and I actually tried to get in. And now looking back, I'm like, perhaps I'm glad I didn't go.
Yeah, he lucked out. He lucked out for sure. For sure.
Yeah. But you stayed in for 6 years, and how did that go? How did you feel about the experience? How do you feel it impacted you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't like the experience, believe it or not. I have been diagnosed with CPTSD, which is chronic PTSD, because the military was just so brutal. It wasn't a really great place for like a closeted trans woman. I wasn't closeted at the time because I guess I didn't know what I was
Oh,
trans,
I
other than
gotcha.
just
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like it was
Hmm.
like I wasn't raised with like comprehensive LGBTQ education, so I thought the dream of wanting to be a woman every night, but when I went to sleep was just like a common thing that everybody had to deal with from time to time. So yeah,
I
I was
mean,
like,
women are pretty cute.
but
You're just
I know, right? It's like, doesn't everybody want to be a girl? And it's like, you okay, never mind. I didn't say a thing. And it was kind of like, yeah, it was kind of like that thing. So I had to like play a role in the military. And this
Mhm.
is like me looking back at it too. It's like I got really strong. I actually learned how to fight, jujitsu. And so I can defend myself. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to get big and strong because of me. It was, I want to be strong so I can stop being bullied every day. And it's really interesting because I only have like two photos of the time that I was like huge. Like I weigh
Mm.
like right now I'm like 5'9", 130.
Mhm.
But when I was my biggest, I was about like 5'9", 170 in pure muscle.
Oh,
Like so just
wow.
I was like a welterweight, like fighter status. It was actually kind of monstrous. Like it was a lot. I was working out 2 times a day, like on the ship. Like when we were on deployment, there was nothing else. It was the only thing that kept my rage down, actually. So yeah, it wasn't a great experience.
Mhm.
And how it's affected me through my life is it kind of steeled my resolve about like wanting to be a peace person, wanting to not blow people up. It also allowed me to like build a resilience. Now, it wasn't easy to get out of the military and suffer through understanding how to get into civilian life because
Yeah.
I was an 18-year-old kid and I got out of the
Mhm.
military, right? And that transition was really rocky for me because I feel like I had to suffer the way a lot of military people suffer when they get out of the military, which is everybody's kind of an asshole. And the reason is because that's the culture. It's either bully or be bullied. So therefore, a lot of people are just really jerks to each other in the military to like get by, and everybody's super angry and bitter because they're always out away from home, and the people who are managing are terrible. So everybody's really angry at each other already because of this situation we're all in. So
Mhm.
coming out of the military is really hard to make friends
Mm.
because your personality doesn't clash. It clashes with regular, civilian people because like people are actually nice to each other. Like it's not something that you're just like you don't call everybody an asshole. You don't like rag on people for their own like, immutable qualities and things like that. Like seriously, like I had to learn to be a good person coming out of the military. So it was very lonely originally coming out. But now understanding that part about myself and being able to like get through it has made me very resilient. It's allowed me to understand how to handle my triggers, how to like understand what my triggers are, because I had very complex triggers,
Mm.
like systematic ones. So, for example, if I felt like there was something out of my control that an organization was doing to me, I used to get really triggered, and I used to call it, cabbie space, which is like what my nickname was in the Navy. And what it was I would get apathetic, I would get sad, I would get just I would just be a really depressed sad human
Mhm.
because it like put me into deployment mode, I like to call it. And so understanding those complex triggers was allowed me to like understand myself more deeply.
And how do you,
So, yeah.
as like, I haven't been in the military, but I struggle with PTSD a little bit myself, and I've been learning how to recognize my triggers and learning how to handle that. And there's a level of avoidance, but some things you can't avoid. And so it's for me it's been finding coping mechanisms. What do you do to handle that? How do you handle that?
So there's like I think of it in stages, right? The first part is understanding that there may be a trigger,
Mhm.
that you're feeling that the how you feel may not be reflective of how you want to feel, right? It might be your brain or response doing something.
Mhm.
Once you're able to recognize like, why am I so mad? Right? It's like, why am I so angry right now? Why am I sad all of a sudden? You can kind of like do a little, this is my process. Kind of go back and figure out like, oh, this is the thing. So let's say I'll go with an easy one. If somebody grabs my hand or slaps my hand,
Mhm.
that's very triggering for me because that's like how they were like train you in the Navy, like on a reactor panel. It's like if you grab for something that isn't the right switch, they literally would just slap you
Mhm.
and stop you from doing that or grab your hand or yell in your ear really loud. Those that's a very mechanical trigger, but it took me a long time to understand like why I would get so agitated and irritable around the person that did that, for example. It could be
Mhm.
something as harmless as, "Oh, let me do that for you real quick on the computer," like, even though they're not even
Mm.
being, malicious, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'd get really irritable and I'd be like, "Arr," and once I figured it out, I was like, "Oh, it's because she slapped my hand." Right? Or
Yeah.
she didn't slap my hand, but she moved my hand. She took something out of my hand. Something like that. It was I was able to then understand, it's like, "Oh, I'm triggered because of that." And what happens is over time, I realized even after the incident happened, I'm like, "Oh, I'm triggered because somebody did that to my hand." And I'm using this as a simple one, right?
Mhm.
And then eventually what happens is once I become more and more aware of it, when somebody touches my hand and I feel that emotion, I can in the moment feel like, "Oh my gosh, I'm being triggered." And you can either feel that emotion and have it no matter what, or you could try to derail that emotion and just take a deep breath, take a walk, do
Yeah.
what you got to do to be able to handle it to the point where it's like, oh, this person's about to touch my hand. I'm not going to be triggered. Right.
Mhm.
Which is sometimes impossible. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
However, what I've done is over time, I've been able to like neuroprogram myself in a way to understand it's like, oh, I'm just upset because of this thing. And then what used to be something that would last a day turned into not lasting even 30 seconds. Right.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, and that takes a lot of work, and especially for the
Absolutely.
complex ones. Like, sometimes you don't even know. Like, I've been in a triggered space for, like, 3 months before, where
Oh,
I didn't even realize that the job that I was working for at the time was so triggering that I felt like I was on deployment, and I was
back
emoting,
in that space.
yeah, in that way for, like, 3 months. Like,
That's
that is, like, no
awful.
joke. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I snap out of it. I'm like, "Whoa, why am I feeling this way?" And then it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh," and then trying to search through all of it and figure out how I got there,
It
and
takes a
then
self-awareness.
yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Wow. Did you get, in terms of support coming out of the military, do you feel like you got much support? What kind of support did you get? And what would you like to have seen more of?
Yeah, actually, when because I also ran for Congress back in 2020,
Oh,
and I was
wow.
running on veteran issues in particular. I will say what I did get, which was 4 years of college, which was nice. I
Mhm.
also have health benefits. I am transitioning through the military, believe it or not, through the VA, because that's a benefit that I'm afforded, and therefore I'm gonna take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I'm doing that. Of course, surgery and things I'm gonna do outside, but outside of the VA system. But they are gonna start offering it next year. That's big news, by the way. That they're allowing transgender affirming care surgeries for veterans now starting next year, which is a big
Fantastic.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that just happened like a month ago, that announcement. And then I'm probably gonna take advantage of the VA loan as well. which is probably one of the best benefits is where you can actually get like a 0 down payment loan for a house, for your first house.
Wow.
Yeah, which is huge. It helps the approval process, even though I'm not gonna try to do 0 down, I'm gonna try to actually put money down, but the fact that I don't have to really deal with a lot of that and I can be approved for a VA loan is actually nice. It's actually one of the best benefits and probably one of the most money that the military spends on. However, it's not enough. So for me, this is what I believe that veterans should get. It's something called the Hero's Promise. So heroes with a ES with an apostrophe at the end, meaning the promise belongs to the heroes. So the Hero's Promise was a 9 plank plan, which was going to serve people while they're in and while they're out. So first, I'll go through quickly. I haven't done this bullet list in a second because I'm not
Take
running
your
for office
time.
anymore. Yeah, yeah. So, first is the ability to file a grievance outside of your chain of command for assault and sexual assault and harassment. So, therefore, you don't have to go to your like direct boss and say, "Hey, by the way, that so and so harassed me." Or if
That
it
would be
is your
huge.
boss, you would have to deal with that, right? So, there's a big buddy complex inside of the military. So it's like they try to like downplay things because they don't want to hurt the good old boys, right?
Hmm.
So that's one thing. Another thing is I want to see like access to mental health while people are in, because right now one of the worst things in the military is the fact that a lot of mental health conditions go undiagnosed. Because if you get diagnosed with like depression, you can't operate a reactor, you lose your job, for example. So
Oh, yeah.
therefore, your whole career is over, right? So then
That's
all of a
very
sudden it creates a
preventative.
stigma, right?
Yeah.
It creates a stigma, and nuke operations isn't the only one either. So there's a lot of people who can't get diagnosed for the actual conditions that they have, so people hide it. That's why the suicide
Mm.
rate is so high, because we are taught and trained to not talk to anybody about our mental health conditions because it's a detriment to seek help, right? Even in the military, they train us to know that if you go and see a psych, that you're gonna get screwed over, right? And not for all jobs, but a lot of the jobs in the military, it's like that. So I would like to see better. So that's one of the planks as well. Making sure that everybody has access to sleep and food,
Sleep and
like
food are based.
yeah, yeah. So, it's like in the Navy, there's a common term that's like you sleep when you're dead, where it seems like you are a hard worker when you're pulling 24-hour shifts, when you're pulling 36-hour shifts. And so all of a sudden, like you're sleep deprived, they wake you up, they don't give you blocks of unprotected rest time. So like all of a sudden you go in and you're trying to sleep for 6 hours, right? Because you're a human, and then all of a sudden they're waking you up in the middle of the night for nothing,
Mhm.
right? For
Mhm.
absolutely nothing, just to just disrupt your sleep schedule. So that creates a lot of mental health issues, obviously, but it also deprives the ability for people to this may be a little conspiratorial, but when people are like sleep deprived, it's easier to control them.
Oh,
So I think when you're really tired, you don't have a lot of pushback.
that's interesting. I've heard someone say that it's in preparation for if you're out on the field so that you operate under those conditions. Do you feel that's not true? Or is that
Not
what
not
they
not really.
say? Or
That's
no?
what they say. That's what they
Okay.
say. But the thing
Yeah.
is, but the reality is when you're in wartime, like the adrenaline's keeping you awake.
Gotcha.
Like,
Gotcha.
you're getting when missiles are getting thrown at you, there's a fire, there's a flooding,
Well, you're going to
nobody's
be
gonna sleep.
there. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
nobody's gonna sleep,
I mean,
right?
I've
So
been
so
woken up to my apartment flooding and having to pull my computer out of it. So
yeah, yeah,
I know
yeah,
that
yeah.
feeling. We're there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like your adrenaline's kicking in, you're doing that stuff.
Mm.
So that's something else that we need. Now the here's the more controversial pieces. So and also food, right? Three meals. But this is one of the controversial pieces. I want to see a pension program that is given to every single veteran immediately upon release of the military. So if you serve 2 years, you get 2 years of pension right out, meaning
Mhm.
that you would get your base pay every month for 2 years with the
Mhm.
stipulation that you have to go and see a mental health provider once a month. or you won't
Ooh.
get the benefit, right?
Mm.
So therefore it forces people to know that this is just part of the program. So if you want that check every month, you better be scheduling some mental health,
Is
right? So
that
therefore it catches PTSD before people kill themselves, because 20 people a day kill themselves from suicide. They're victims of suicide every day.
veterans, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
do you feel like that would help ease people back into civilian
Yes.
life as well?
Absolutely. So it's actually one of the main reasons people don't get out of the military, because they don't have a safety net. So the way that program would work is like, if you serve 6 years, it caps at 6 years. So you do 6 years and you're getting 6 years pension. If you do 8 years, you're getting 6 years pension. So it's a one for one match. If you are a
Mm.
combat vet, you get an additional 2 years no matter how much you served. So if you did 6 years as a combat veteran, then you're getting an extra 2 years, meaning 8 years of pension to figure out and put your life together after combat, right? Which is
Mhm.
a long time. And it doesn't, and people may not take the full 6 years. However, they can still get paid and start another career. So they can actually go to school, or they can get a trade or work as an intern, whatever they need to do to get their lives right, they'll get paid for it. And a lot of people who say, "Oh, we can't afford that," I was like, well, if we can't afford to take care of our veterans, then we can't afford to send them to war.
Yeah.
Like that's basically how that works.
Our people
And then
first.
yeah, exactly. And then the basic ones are like healthcare for all veterans, regardless of what it is. Healthcare, I mean, education fully for all veterans. If you want to get a law degree, get a law degree. If that didn't work out for you, want to be a doctor, then get a doctorate. Like,
Mm.
what's the harm of having more educated people, right? Like, it's
Mm.
not the end of the world. And a lot of people don't even use that benefit. Housing for every veteran. So even if you're a homeless veteran, you could go and seek housing. Now you may have to relocate, but the thing is that we're going to try to set up housing in every major city as well as every
Mm.
major pocket in the country, so you can actually have like veteran facilities, so you can actually or voucher programs, so people can be like, okay, this is what the rent is here, can I get the voucher? And then
Mhm.
they could do that too. So like guaranteed housing for every veteran was very, very important as well. So those are my basic steps for how we essentially prevent veteran suicide. Because if you give everybody those benefits, that's what it is. Now, this is going back to the pension one. I'm actually considering writing a book on this, actually called "The Deep Problem," because all reactors are below the waterline, told from a Navy nuke, right? So I want to tell a story. And one of the biggest things that I want to talk about is how people get trapped in the military. In the military, like when you're on deployment, they sell you cars, they sell all types of things on board. So then you're out to sea for like 6 months and you're a young kid, right, that just got into the military for the first time. You have money burning a hole in your pocket. So all of a sudden the car dealership says, "Oh, if you buy this Dodge Charger for like $30,000, then we'll have it waiting for you when you get to shore with the keys." Like, and
Mm.
they sell these loans, and then when 4 years later, when the recruiter is like talking to you, or the career counselor, they're like, "Hey, you got this huge payment on your car. What are you going to do when you get out?" And then these young kids are just like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't think about that." They
Yeah.
increase their debt to income ratios, so therefore you're like constantly locked into the military, right?
Wow.
So that's one of the things that they do. They also do this in another sinister way, where if you get married in the military, you get double your pay. Like, you literally get double your
I
pay
actually
and
had
housing
I
benefits.
had someone that was in the military literally be like, I didn't even know them that well, and they were like, "Do you want to marry?
Yeah,
I'll get double my pay and I'll give you some of it." And I was like, "Holy
yeah,
shit!" I was like, "No,
that
I'm not getting married to you. I don't even know you."
yeah,
But I
yeah, yeah.
understand, like that's
That
wild.
happens a lot. Now
That's
now now here's
wild.
here's the sinister part. You think you're getting a good deal until that family starts and you have a child, and now you have the
Wow.
best military benefits in the world for your family. So now you try to get out, and now you have to raise a family when you get out with no options coming out. So
Mm.
because you have no pension coming out, because you have no nest egg coming out, because a lot of military people don't make a lot of money, you're trapped in a vicious cycle. And so a lot of people who are in the military are trapped because they don't want to lose their benefits
Yeah.
for their family. So that's why family is so encouraged in military, because the military is so, um, I'm sorry, the military is just it's very sinister in that
Mm.
way, because it wants you to have a family and start a family, but it's the only way they can catch you on the hook. Like, I've seen so many good sailors, like, wanting to get out of the military, and then, like, that last 3 months before they get out, they realize there's no way out, and they wanna keep their family safe, so they stay in for another 6 years, doing something that they hate, where it's literally killing them because it's so bad. Like, I've seen spirits get broken.
Oh yeah, that's awful.
Yeah. It's really bad. It's really bad. That's why things like the hero's promise scares the military, because they know
People
that if
could
we
exit.
unbolt the exit door, we're gonna unbolt the exit door
Mm.
and give people a safety net out of the Navy. Like, that safety net, that parachute out of the military, that's not the Navy, but the out of the military would just have a massive walkout. But the thing is, like, I also now I'm like super anti-military industrial complex, if you can't tell. I also want to increase the recruiting age to 25. So
Because
so that
I was
yeah.
wondering about that because I was thinking today about gender socialization and I was like, well, I want to talk about
Mhm.
gender socialization and how that might have impacted you in terms
Yeah.
of the military. And then I was like, well, you're an adult when you go into the military. And then I'm like, okay, wait a minute here. Because I know I'm 26 and I still
Yeah.
feel like I'm
Yeah.
developing. I feel a lot more like I've come such a long way since I was 18.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so I'm sure it's
You have
still
a sense of
in.
identity.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Because your identity is still being formed at your formidable years of your life between 18 and 24. A lot of people go to college, a lot of people discover themselves, a lot of people go to start a career, they learn their skill set, they
Hmm.
understand who they are after that period, that formative part of your life. And then once you're going into the military, then you already have a sense of identity. The military thrives on taking young children, and I'm sorry, 18-year-olds, if you're watching, you're still a child. Even a 21-year-old is still a child. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, sorry everybody, but I'm just a
No.
tough pill to swallow. But the thing is, you're still a child, meaning that you can still be what is it? Almost like groomed in a sense. Like the military
Mhm.
grooms you to be this warrior, and your own sense of identity becomes nothing but the military because you're an empty vessel. So if you're on a ship or you're on a base overseas, your only world is the military. So the second you start thinking about leaving that world, you know how scary that is because you never got the
Mm.
opportunity to grow up in the real world. I remember when I was leaving the military, like there was a chief that told me he was like, he's like, Josie, what are you gonna do when you get out? I'm like, I don't know, go to school, figure out something. I'm like, and he was like, I've talked to my friends and they tell me it's hard. And I'm like, he goes, it's a tough world out there. Don't you know? I have a lot of friends and they're having a lot of hard times in regular life outside the military. And I was like, when did you join the military, chief? And he was like, 18 years old. I was like, you can't tell me anything about how hard life is. So I was just like, I'm ready to accept that
Oh,
difficulty,
I got chills
right?
from that. That's like uncomfortable. You shouldn't be
Yeah, right?
discouraging people like that.
Oh yeah, totally discouraging. That's their whole purpose, is to discourage you so you can stay in the military. I was contacted by a career counselor when I was on the ship because my name kept popping out of the mouths of people who said they weren't going to stay in the Navy. Because of the fact I would give them good arguments, and this is what my argument was. So if you are like an E3 or an E2, which is like lowest rank or one of the lower ranks in the military, you're making very little money. So what I would tell them is like, look, if you get out of the military after 4 years and you take the GI Bill, you're going to get E5 pay and housing benefits and go to school. And if you want to come, if you like the Navy, great, come back as an officer. Make them say no to you. Don't force them that you have to say yes to them.
Mhm.
And so a lot of young military sailors got out of the Navy because they're like, no, I'm just going to take the GI Bill. because they didn't connect those dots of like, wait, I can actually get paid more money getting out of the military, going to school, and if I like it, I can just go back in as an officer and outrank everybody. Right, and outrank my
Mm.
chiefs and everybody. But so people were taking that option and leaving the military to go to school if you were a low ranking person. And yeah, a career counselor literally threatened me and was like, hey, if I hear any more of this, I'm gonna make sure that because you're affecting. They basically said that I was affecting Manning. So they told me to stop or else. So
Wow.
I couldn't even tell like my friends like, hey, this is what you should do. And if I did, I'd be like, don't you dare say my name. Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
say anything, okay?
You didn't hear it from me, but there's a better deal on the outside world. Like,
Mm.
like it was like I was that person. I turned down $90,000 cash up front to stay in the military.
Oh, wow.
Well, 45,000 cash up front, but it was going to be 45 for the rest. And then on top of my pay. But that's the only way you can keep a nuke in is buying and pay for them because it's so bad.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Pivoting back
Yeah.
to that sense
Mhm.
of identity, and this is something that I'm always quite interested in terms of like, I know that the first time I learned about a trans person was really unfortunate in the sense of I was in high school and I was participating in this day of silence for the LGBT community because I was like, I'm gay. And my friend got very mad at me because, I grew up in a pretty conservative area, and her family was very religious, and her sister came out as a woman.
Oh,
And she got very angry at me because she said, this is ruining our family. Trans people are ruining our family. And it was this weird moment because I was recognizing my gender wasn't I wasn't I was not vibing with gender. And
you're right.
I and then I kept wondering, am I a man? Am I a man? Am I going to ruin my family? And I was like, no, I'm not a man. And then it took a while to learn about non-binariness, but I'm curious, what was like, did you go through the whole military experience not knowing about trans people? When did you learn about trans people? When did it hit you that you're trans?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I will just start like every trans person has this like story in their head really quick now at this point. But basically started at 8 years old. I had my first wish to be a girl. Where I was just like, I don't like boys. Like I don't like hanging out with boys. Like they're gross. They just like farts and stuff. And I'm not about that. I just want to hang out with the girls and chit chat and not just play in the mud. I hated that. Anyways, so I was like, that was the first time I like openly said to my cousin, I'm like, man, I wish I was born a girl. I think your life would be a little bit easier for me, like at
Mm.
8. And then I don't blame him at all about this, but he runs out the door. It was a big family get together with my entire extended family, and it's like, "Ooh, Josie wants to be a girl," and they would all look at me and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "No, it's not true. It's a lie. It's a joke. It's a blah blah blah." And then I repressed it for another 28 years, but or
Ugh.
not for about 20 years actually. So I was a 90s kid. So I'm 35. So I was introduced to trans issues through Maury Povich and Jerry Springer and all of those daytime shows where trans women were like, they were they were entertainment. They were to be poked fun at, something that isn't real, something that isn't legitimate that you could actually be. So I was like, yeah, whatever. Even though I was deeply fascinated because I was like, wow, that woman is beautiful,
Is that
right?
the
And
like man in a dress stereotype
yeah,
or
right. The one that's the most vivid in my memory is a Maury Povich episode that there was a game that they played with the audience where these beautiful women would come on stage and they had these cards over their head and then the audience was supposed to guess man or woman, and then they would
Mm.
flip the card and everybody would go completely nuts when this beautiful trans woman flipped over the card that said man on it.
Mm.
And so for me, I'm just like, whoa, okay, that must be entertainment only. Like that's not something that a human can actually like live and do. Right.
Oh,
Like I didn't because I was like, wow, that's beautiful. What a beautiful human. And then
yeah.
everything broke into laughter and chuckles and heckles and laughs. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, well, that's not a life I want to live. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened there. And then once I joined the military, I would constantly go to sleep at night, like, wanting to be a girl. Like, it was, like, bad. Like, I every night, it was an incessant, unstoppable, like, just thought. But I didn't know, right? I didn't know what that was. I wasn't taught LGBTQ education. I didn't
Mhm.
know that what I was feeling was gender dysphoria. I didn't know that me wanting to sleep in the girls' birthing was not a creepy thing. It was a thing that I wanted to do to be around my people, right? The
Mhm.
people I identified with, because I'm a woman loving woman mainly. I am bi, but like I'm pretty gay. But like for me, it's like my cohort were the lesbian girls on board the ship. They were my friends, my
Mhm.
deepest friends. But it was always that barrier of like, you're our friends until we get to this point, right? And then all of a sudden the door closes and then they have their fun. And then I'm just like, not sexually, just like in their own spaces, right? Where
Mhm.
I was not allowed to be. And I didn't understand that, right? I didn't understand that's what that was. I didn't understand that my visceral rage for like being a man was because of my gender dysphoria,
Mhm.
right? I used to go around and tell like the women I dated pre-transition, I'm like, I would be like, why are you with me? I'm a guy. I'm gross. Like, like I would literally say that. And I would always felt like all the women who dated me were like taking pity on me because I'm like, wow,
Oh,
like, yeah, that's how I felt because I'm like, if
yeah.
I were you, I wouldn't date me because I'm a gross guy, right? Like I used to
Mhm.
think like that, right? So
Mhm.
I never had a self identity I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was just my thing. And so now looking back, I was very effeminate, but no one saw me as gay. People just saw me
Really?
as weird,
Oh, that's
right? Like,
interesting.
right now, I've been told by men that the way that I treated women pre-transition was gay
Mm.
because it was like so loving and so like just very gay love.
Mhm.
And so because of that, they just saw the relationship I had. It was like, man, like you're pretty gay. Like as far
Mhm.
as like how I treated women versus how they treated women, I guess. So it made them uncomfortable. I don't know what it was.
It's kind of
But
funny
it
because
was
you were gay,
I
just
was gay.
just a little different than what they
Just
were
a different
thinking.
kind of gay. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right, and that's why none of my relationships in the past work is because I was dating straight women. Of course, it didn't work out.
Mhm.
There was just something missing, it was the guy part. So women would eventually just be like, I don't
Mhm.
know, straight women, I love you, but yeah, strange way of, like, wanting a man. Anyways,
That's fair. We've got
but
some
it
things to work through, some gender
yeah.
things to work through.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going through the timeline here. So after I left the military, I went to college. I was still dealing with so much of my own crap from the military. I felt like it was like if
Mm.
if if there was a plate of issues, gender identity was on the bottom because I had poverty to deal with because I was out of the Navy and all the military. I had the military trauma to deal with. I had another trauma to deal with, and I had all of these other things
Stuff.
underneath. And
Yeah.
then as soon as I started to like deal with those things, eventually gender came up, and then that was when I started to like really start to understand like, hey, trans women exist, like that's a thing. And then around 30 years old was the first time as an adult I was like, am I a boy? And I couldn't answer that question, and it freaked me
Mm.
out. And that was like 5 years ago when I was like 30. And like this time though, I started researching it. And I'm a big researcher, right? I do it for a living now. And so for me, I started researching everything about trans things, like how to feminize my voice was a big thing for me,
Mhm.
right? Even though I'm got a scratchy throat right now. But voice feminization was a big thing that I cared about. But then eventually I talked myself out of it. I'm like, well, I'm past 30, so that book is closed. The cement is hardened, and I just shoved it aside. And I was also like, I don't want to ruin my political career either. So I just
Oh yeah, there's so
internally
much
held it
to,
in,
yeah.
right? I just internally held it in, and I'm like, I can just deal with this. And then eventually, what ended up happening, I started getting really resentful of people being able to flaunt their identities. And I was just like, I started getting annoyed when people are like, I'm a woman, or I am gay, or I am the things. And I was like, and I would get really annoyed because I was like, I didn't understand why I got annoyed, because I was always identity list, because I
Mm,
never felt like I identified as a Latino male in a
mm,
sense, because like it was just something that wasn't that I could connect with as a human. It's kind of like how Abigail, not Schreier, Abigail Thorne, when she came out, when she started talking about like the the person who's not there is very real for me, because I was also a public figure when I came out. So I completely understand the idea of putting on a show,
mm.
putting on the performance. The person that was pre-transition Josie had a pretty decent life. She had a lot going on for her, but the
Mhm.
thing is, it wasn't my life
It
I
wasn't
wanted to live.
you.
Right, and so going now, fast forwarding to, last year, January, um, I I shattered, I shattered as a human. It wasn't "Oh, Josie, you might be trans," and I found a trans community and they all accepted me, and then it was a warm
Mm.
embrace hug. No. It was in a puddle in my room, like me in the fetal position saying, "I can't do this anymore." All triggered by one moment when I was running for Congress as a progressive, somebody who's, fought for the progressive movement, was one of the founder of the San Diego Progressive Democratic Club, and was a big proponent for Bernie Sanders. I was a delegate for like the last two presidential campaigns. So I've done a lot for the community. And the Justice Democrats, and I'll call them out here, but the Justice Democrats, I had hundreds of nominations come in. I helped them in the previous cycles before. I thought, hey, at least I
Mhm.
can get an interview. And they didn't interview me, and they gave my opponent, who was the city council president at the time, who wasn't a progressive, who was actually a person who believed in the annexation of Israel and hates Palestine because of the fact that she took so much money from like DMFI. But that's another story. But they sent out a tweet saying, "We are proud to endorse, the first queer Latina woman to Congress." Right? And that was their whole thing. It wasn't about our progressive values. It wasn't about anything. And that was
It's
the moment.
identity politics.
Yeah, and that was the moment that I cracked. That was the moment when where I was like, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair. They don't see me for who I am as a queer,
Mhm.
Latino woman that I actually am."
Oh, I'm
And I
so
felt
sorry.
so robbed. Yeah, and it was, and that was just the trigger that cascaded the rest of my entire journey. But I can honestly say I made it through, and I am happier than I've ever been in my entire life. I don't think I ever really was truly happy. So that's very real for me.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was getting through the eye of the needle through the beginning of my transition was hard and harrowing, and I consider I survived it. And but now once I made it through the initial hurdles, like, yeah, it sucked. I lost family. Yeah, it sucked that I had all these things happen. But at the end of the day, me being authentically me allowed me to be more of the badass I've always have been, because now I'm like, I'm crushing it. Like, I mean, I'm doing
Yes.
things that I never thought I would be doing at this point in my life. Like, really, like, I'm really happy. Like, I do trans research every day. Like, I wake up in the morning and work for trans rights. Like, I have a dream job. Like, straight up. I collect the data set for like what all trans people across the United States use. Like, that's what I do. So it's a long circle from 8 to here, but that's the journey.
I'm so proud of you. That's fucking
Aw.
incredible.
Well, thanks. I
It
appreciate it.
sounds like you know it, and that to me is even more incredible.
Oh,
So I love like that. You're obviously that's hard to listen to, and it's hard to recognize, and it hurts because I just wish that all of us could have had that education and avoided these things. But it's so good to see you out here thriving, and
yeah.
I think
Thanks.
that it's incredible to see you up here doing what you're doing. So thank you for being here and thank you for sharing all of that. That's
Yeah.
mind-boggling. I want to go back to you said that your experience in the military, you were really playing a role in terms of gender, right? I definitely have done that too. I knew that the womanhood thing didn't feel right to me, but it was what society expected. And so I did it. And I did it well. And there was even a satisfaction in I can play this role efficiently. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Absolutely.
so
Like,
weird.
it's so weird, like beating up a guy, like just like in the military.
I'm like, mine's like giggling the right way or flirting with a dude, and you're like beating up a guy.
Yeah.
The two
Yeah, like
genders.
the two genders. Like, no, seriously though, like I was like so picked on for so long. And when I learned jujitsu, and I'm like an extremist. So when I do something, I go all in
You go
100%. That's
hard.
just
Yeah.
that's my personality type, right? So when I started working out, I read bodybuilding books, I was doing the dieting, I was doing it all. I was like learning how Bulgarian like workout routines and was like doing all of the things. And so I just scientifically got bigger because of the fact that I was doing all this research on how to make muscles grow fast. And so when I started taking jujitsu and all that stuff, I went from like one of the weakest, like, pathetic, I guess, guys in the ship to like one of the strongest people that people didn't want to mess with because I was just angry. Like you don't want to poke the bear, right? And
Mm.
that's basically how it was. Like when people poke the bear, like there was a moment when I just swore off fighting altogether because something got a little too out of hand. Because somebody like did a really sucker punch type of move and like shoved me, but he was a lot smaller person than me.
Mm.
So I saw red. I actually
Mm.
blacked out. And there was a lot of people in the room, but like when my friend punched me in the arm to make me come to,
Mhm.
like I literally had this person dangling in a chokehold, like
Oh, was that
unconscious.
scary?
Oh my god, it was so scary. I dropped this person like a sack of potatoes. I was 3 months from getting out of the military at the time. So I was like, "Oh my god." And I walked out and I was like, "If he's dead, I'm gonna be at this location." Because I didn't even and I just like walked out and
Yeah.
didn't look back. But
You're like, nope.
yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah, yeah, and he came to. I'm not in prison, but like,
That's good.
uh yeah, but it was one of those things where it was like the role took me in a way that was just like scary
Absolutely.
because it wasn't who I was. It was almost like a something was created inside of me that wasn't me.
Mm.
And it was really terrifying. And I stopped really interacting with people in that way, which was violent.
Yeah. I'm glad
So I
I'm glad to
refused.
hear that. Um,
Yeah.
so one of the things I've personally struggled with in terms of like that role, I created a lot of habits and it became a habitual thing, even though it's like it felt like a performance and not me. And so I've been trying to unpack those things. And that's been like, I know when we think about transition, we think about the hormones, the surgery, maybe the clothes, learning how to do makeup or learning how to um, do things that are more kind of in that area, but there's so much in terms of like I know a lot of my behaviors are very feminine and some of those I'm going to keep. But I'm curious, have you had to do a lot of unlearning of those behaviors or has that come very naturally to you? And
It
go ahead.
Yeah, it came fairly naturally to me. It actually
Mm.
was that's actually something that shocked me. Like my femininity was like it was always there, but it was just like hidden behind a sheet. And once I pulled the sheet off, like it was just like I'm Josie. Like it was just like it was it was pretty great. And one of the things that I've noticed inside of me is that a lot of those triggers I was talking about from the military actually disappeared because a lot of those triggered
Mm,
PTSD moments was wrapped around my masculinity.
that makes sense.
Like, yeah, right. So everything from drinking a beer, like because I don't want to do that. I never really liked beer, but I pretended to like it. But now I don't get triggered when I drink a beer, right?
You get
Because
to
it's not
step into a
it's
whole different world almost.
exactly right. So a lot of the masculine characteristics that I was bullied for disappeared. So that did help me immensely. I do I think the biggest habit that was the one that took me a long time to break is the hard one. The final boss of transitioning for a trans feminine person is voice transition.
Mm,
Like
hmm.
transitioning my voice and getting to the point where it's like it just became naturally me every time I spoke was a big was very difficult for me because as you can see I like speaking. I like,
Hmm.
talking about things and things like that. So that's my gift, that's my talent, that's my skill, right? Is my ability to use my rhetoric in a way that is effective, at least in my opinion. I don't know, I might be completely wrong. But I do feel that. So my voice was one of the things that gave me the most dysphoria, actually, believe it or not. My voice was very low before. It's
Mm,
like baritone low, like
mm,
super low. I am surprised I can even get the registers that I hit now naturally.
mm.
But like it's one of those things where after I unlearned that behavior, like, I felt so much better as a human. Like, I cried the first time I listened to my voicemail when it was a voice that I appreciated for myself. Like, because it was that was, like, one of the biggest euphoria moments for me, was when I could, like, hear audio of myself, and I'm like, "Wow, that's, like, Josie," you know?
That's
As
perfect.
Yeah, so it's like, that's kind of how I've been, in that regard. As far as, like, I don't know. I'm pretty binary. I'm pretty femme. I really don't. There was a very little things I think that really carried over because everything was like hyper masculine in a lot of ways. Hyper toxic too because I didn't know what was like masculinity, so I just like guessed.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it wasn't great. I always say that for me, masculinity or being a boy having man or male privilege when you're a trans woman is like having a shotgun without training
Mm,
because you just don't know how to understand how to use it because all of a sudden you're just like you do the thing and then you don't even realize that oh that's not the way you're supposed to do the thing and I'm like but I thought
mhm,
that's what boys did as a thing, right?
mhm,
And so it was like this idea where my masculinity almost never hit right. It was always one of those
mm,
things where I'm like hurting somebody else or it would just come off like awkward. So I was always an awkward guy because it
mhm,
wasn't because I was like performing, right? Now I got the performance pretty good. I mean, for a lot of ways, but it wasn't who I was. And every time I wield that male privilege that I guess I did for a little bit, but
mhm,
it was like completely misused. So it was never something that I liked. In fact, I hated
mhm,
it.
mhm,
I didn't want to have that level of firepower. I just wanted to be respected as the women in the room.
mhm,
And that's kind of how it was. And a lot of it was like toward the end of my pre-transition period, like there were points when I just wouldn't speak very much. I would just like highlight women all the time. I'd be like, oh well actually I want to say or actually and I would like just step back so much to just nothing because I just felt like I didn't deserve to speak
mm.
and it was because not because I didn't have something to say it's just that I felt like oh I'm a guy like I don't want to talk because I don't want to but that hurt because I wasn't a guy
Yeah, yeah,
and so that was kind of how that was in my way, and I internalized it on my own in that sense.
absolutely. So, in
Yeah.
terms of military and gender, I've heard, and I have this hypothesis that the military is has a bit of a masculine and perhaps even a toxic masculine culture. Do you agree with that?
That the military has toxic masculine culture,
Yes.
or
Do
just
you agree with that? And where, if so, where do you see that? How do you see that? And if not, I'd love to hear why you feel that way.
Oh, yeah, no, the military is extremely hypermasculine. It's mainly men in the military first off, so that's a big problem and a big issue. It's to the point where, like, boys can do anything in the military and girls still can't even be on a submarine, for example, right?
Mm.
That's actually, like, a thing, right? So, a lot of, like, the macho man behaviors, drinking, like, right, like that masculine behavior of like binge drinking at ports, like womanizing, is a big thing. The slurs that they would throw at women, like behind their back, like were just like terrible. Like they
Mm.
would like the women in the military, like, like referring them to animals, like that are like highly sexualized in a way, right?
Mm.
Like, but still like calling them livestock animals, right? Like in a
Mhm.
way, right?
Mhm.
Talking, I just so there was a lot of like sexism that was also um emulated and reflected. So think about it this way: if you're like a 20-year-old kid and you see this chief or first class who's like, in his late 20s, then all of a sudden it's like this person says some joke about some girl that isn't in the room anymore, and then all of a sudden they say some sexist joke. That person, that young man, is now going to say, oh, that's what I got to do to stick in. Everybody's
Mm.
laughing at him, so therefore I need to do the same thing.
Yep.
And I've literally seen the transformation of good young men turn into complete, utter assholes, like the worst of the worst humans. I have seen that transformation into filth happen, and it's so sad. It's so sad because then all of a sudden, this person you respect is now saying horrible, irreprehensible things, and you can't do anything about it because if you call them out, now you're going against what everybody is saying, right?
Mhm.
And that's what happens is like that either you're going to be quiet about it and just let it happen, or you're going to or you're going to join in, or you're going
Mhm.
to ruin your career by speaking up,
Mm.
because these people are literally in control of all your evaluations.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you say, hey, that's not a cool joke to make about her, she's actually a great worker. All of a sudden it's like, oh geez, whatever, and then they remember that comment when they're writing your evaluations for a promotion,
Yeah.
right? And it is that real. It
Right.
is that real. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, I don't have a hard stop. If you want to go a little bit longer, I can. I'm not streaming
Perfect.
tonight, my side. I'm not streaming after later tonight, so I'm gonna finish up a little bit of work afterwards. So don't worry
Gotcha.
about me.
Gotcha.
I can give you time. I can give you time.
I really, really appreciate that. I actually wanted to get some questions in from chat, but Cirque Amy wanted to know, will there be another transgender survey? And if so, when? And how do we participate?
Yay! Questions about survey. Yes, let make me do work. Okay. So yes, I am the project manager leading the the US Trans Survey for 2022. And we are in the process of revision of the survey instrument. You can find the US Transgender Survey at ustranssurvey.org. That's where you can see the results from the 2015 report. But we are going to hopefully finish the revision process sometime shortly, and hopefully start the pledge period in the fall. And what the pledge period means is we're going to try to get as many people to promise to take the survey as possible, trans identified folks. So because this survey serves binary and non-binary trans identities. So everybody's got to, like, if you know trans people, get it out when the pledge is going to be dropping. It's a lot of communities across the country are helping. So we're working with like Planned Parenthood. We're working with we have three big partners: BTAC, which is the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition. You have Trans Latina Coalition. You have Incapia, which is the largest queer AAPI community. They're big partners, and they're going to help us get the information out. So during the pledge period, we're going to collect as many people to say they're going to take the pledge. And then hopefully in the early next year, hopefully February, I'm not saying anything hard in stone for reasons people delays happen. But we're hoping early next year, we're hoping to actually open up the survey for about 4 to 6 weeks. For everybody to then take the survey. And the reason that we do this is because of scientific reasons. We have to make sure that everything's in place. This is a scientific study, so therefore we have to go through the institutional review board to make sure that everything is scientifically ethical, because the people who take the survey are subjects, right? They're taking a survey, a scientific survey. They're research subjects. So therefore, we're going to be asking people about suicidal ideation. We're going to be asking people about trauma. So we got to make sure that we send it to the institutional review board to make sure if they answer these questions, they're not doing harm. We're not doing harm by asking people to recall traumatic experiences. So we make sure that that is all ethical. So that's how important we take this. And that's why it takes a long time for us to get the approval process. But a long answer short is pledge period in the fall. So look out for it. And then the actual survey is going to be administered online next. And we're hoping in next year, early next year. We got 28,000 respondents in 2015. We're hoping for anywhere between 60 to 80,000 this time. I think we're probably going to get over 100,000, but that's my bet. That's my running bet with the researchers. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And of course, is there a Twitter or something I could follow so I could keep updated on that? I would love to get it out to our community and.
Oh, yeah. So NCTE has a Twitter. I don't know I think it's Trans Equality is actually their Twitter handle. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And so it's the National Center for Transgender Equality, and it's transequality.org is our site where you can actually follow and join our mailing list. And then you will get directly emailed when the survey is happening and also updates from time to time on where we are in the survey taking process.
Thank you. Tragically Hipster says, this is meant to be silly, not serious. I seem to be good at the silly questions. How bad or silly is the rivalry between the Navy and the Coast Guard? Context, I'm a USCG brat, LOL. So even amongst us kids, we'd get into arguments.
Yeah, it's fun. No, Navy and Coast Guard people totally, rag on each other, all the time, because we're in the real Navy, but oh my God.
So clearly the Navy is better, right?
Yeah, of course. No, but coasties are great. I love coasties. In fact, I think a lot of people rag on the Coast Guard a little too much because Coast Guard people are actually out to deployments more than Navy people sometimes. And because they're not limited to the same restrictions and deployment requirements of like the Blue Water Navy, the people who are going overseas far, but because the Coast Guard is like Brown Water Navy, like around our coast, right? And so they go out all the time. It's like week in, week out, month out, month in. It's like really hard. So because of that, so yeah, that's where it is. Somebody asked where the merchant marines fall. I'm not sure. Oh yeah. Oh man. But yeah, there's fun there.
Sandoval was wondering, do you know if the military is currently changing or going to change for the better with regards to toxic masculinity, trans issues? Can we expect any progress?
Unfortunately, well, everything's progressing. So slowly but surely, yes. But there are some institutional problems in the military that need to be broken. So for example, like sergeants and chiefs, or like the gunnery and master sergeants, those people who are like E7 to E9, that is like the middle management of the military, and probably the most senior enlisted people. But to become one of those people, and when you get promoted, you actually go through this like initiation ceremony that is super highly secretive and nobody knows what's going on other than like there's just a lot of hazing that's going on. But every person I have seen go through that that initiation process, no matter how cool of a person they used to be, they completely turn into a chief animatron, like totally like just the worst tool bags of all time. Like I'm
Mm.
not sugarcoating it. Like if there's Chiefs watching, just know that I don't really appreciate the way the Chiefs do things. So the things are like there's those good old boy clubs, and there's things that are just built into the system that are just horribly misogynistic and hazing, and like there's just so many things. And until we stop limiting and removing those practices from existing, like they're lucky I'm not in Congress yet, because once I'm in Congress, like I am going to go after the goat locker, they call it, hard. Like hard. I'm a trans woman. I'm going to be fighting for equality and doing all that stuff for sure. But when it comes to like better, like military, like restructuring and reconfiguring, like I want that hero's promise. I want that 25 age recruit limit, and I want the removal of all hazing institutions that are built into the system. Those things would change the system dramatically. Also, if you don't have a bunch of young boys going into the military being trained by idiot guys that are super misogynistic and hateful, then they won't have to emulate them to think they're cool, because people would
Right.
come in at an age that is more defined with their own identity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Material Squirrel was wondering, how would you change the VA services to better serve our trans and non-binary vets?
One of the things that I would like to see is better naming conventions. I am still my wrong name in the Veteran Administration, which is super
Oh,
annoying because I've had my legal name for like a year almost at this point. Well, I guess six
it's your
months at this
dead
point.
name?
Yeah, it's my dead name straight up. So it's really frustrating because I have to deal with that a lot. So I had to like get my vaccine in my dead name, which was super dysphoric because I have a card that I had to like write an I into.
Hmm.
Yeah, because my pre-transition name was my name Josie without the I in it. So I added
Oh.
an I to my life, and that's because I did something for me. So that's why I'm
Oh,
Josie.
I love that. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thing I did for myself. It's for me. It's I. I added an I to my life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Ah,
geez. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Alrighty. Okay, well,
Yeah.
we have one last question, and this one is
Sure.
from me. If you could say anything to all trans women, what would you want to say?
Wow. Okay.
Take your time if
I
you would like.
I will say this to trans women in particular, which is, and I'm sure people have heard some version of it before, but patience is the most important thing that you can do for yourself when you start transitioning. I look back now at where I am versus like a year and a half ago, and I'm just completely at a loss of how far I have gone. How much I never thought that I would have to wear a bra, right? I'm serious, right? Like
No, that's
and
awesome.
yeah, like the awkward teenage girl phase ends, and just look at transition. Like I use this analogy. Transition is like a snail. It is slimy, it is gross, it is slow, and you get burned by salt. So the best thing that you can do when you're in danger is that you can hide in the beautiful shell that you have. The shell that you've been able to create and make that your home of who you are. And you can't rush a snail. If you push it, it will hurt it, and it may not be the same again. So take your time. Be patient, because people will see you as the woman you are over time. It just happens. And it's like magic. And I know it sucks, but it is something that if you have patience, you will get there and you'll be the beautiful girl you already are. Because I never thought that I would be getting to this point. Like I'm actually happy with the way that I look. even though I'm going through a few things like later on next year with some surgeries and stuff. But like I'm pretty fucking happy. And it's because I was patient, because I didn't rush it. I just took it day by day and just lived my life. And then I look in the mirror and I'm like, hey girl, because that's not what I used to say.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time today,
Yeah.
Josie. I hope you will join us
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah, I
I
will. I want to. Let's talk about survey research. I am so down.
Let's go for
Talk
it.
about
I would
that.
love that. Yeah, honestly, this conversation was absolutely fantastic. And if you ever want to
Oh,
come on again, if you ever want to
yeah.
chat, you have me in DMs. You can slide in
Yay.
anytime you want.
Yeah, slide in those DMs.
Hey, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And I hope you have
Yeah,
a
you're so
fantastic
great.
day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you brought up my spirits for the rest of my workday to knock it out. So, oh,
Great.
by the way, I know you're trying to run off, but one thing for the sneak peek for the research conversation that we're gonna have later is the US Transgender Survey will be the cutting edge survey in the LGBT community that goes in deeply on non-binary personality. I mean, not personality, but identities.
That'll
So
be awesome.
non-binary identities, we're actually asking questions that are going to start asking more personally, like what your identity is as a non-binary person.
That's going to be so nice.
It is. It is. We added like I think 14 or some odd questions to the non-binary section of the survey as far as gender identity. So it's really great because I as a trans researcher, just looking at how much the trans community has grown and how definitions have changed and how people identify, how they see themselves, how they express themselves, it is so critical that we make sure that we're able to catalog the non-binary trans experience in a
Hmm.
way that allows us to know that we need more help in the military sector when it comes to non-binary identities. We need to make sure that when it comes to ID documents, that people who are non-binary that don't have their ID documents matching the gender that they are, um how much damage that does to them mentally, discrimination wise. All of those things are super important, and we're going to
Hmm.
track that, but more granular of like what the non-binary experience is for this non-binary person versus this non-binary person. Because one of the coolest things, and I don't want to open up a whole bag of worms because I could talk about research all day, but what's really interesting is that the Williams Institute, which is a big LGBTQ research center out of UCLA, just put out a report recently that's kind of controversial. I'm going to send it to you after this.
Thank you.
But basically, it was a meta-analysis between two different surveys, which generations, which was basically for LGBTQ people, no, LGB people, and then there was a trans pop survey, which was for trans people. And they
Mm.
did a meta-analysis, and what they found is that the cohorts are actually different. That there are more, and I don't know why they use this word. So I'm going to use a different word, but I'm going to use the word that they use first. There are more cis non-binary people than trans non-binary people identified. And I always say, I don't say cis non-binary, I say non-binary trans non-binary people. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, non-trans non-binary people.
Yeah.
Which which
That's-
which kind of interesting, right? Because I've always
Mhm.
considered like the trans umbrella that would encompass the entire non-binary community, but actually I look at it like you have the trans umbrella, and then underneath you have the non-binary umbrella that is halfway beneath the trans umbrella
Mhm.
and halfway off of the trans umbrella. Because there are very different experiences that are trans identities, right? Like for
Yeah.
example, if you're a trans non-binary person, and by the way, non-binary is valid in all cases. I just want to say that right now. If you're non-binary, you're non-binary. I don't give a crap about the nuances and research. So that's I'm a researcher, so researchers always get freaking blasted because of this stuff. Because we're just researching. We're just seeing how things are. We're not
Mhm.
trying to prescribe anything. We just
Mhm.
meet people where they are. But the idea of like a trans non-binary experience versus a non-trans non-binary experience is still being researched. We're still trying to
Mhm.
understand what that is. Like is having singular they them pronouns, is that a uniquely trans non-binary experience? Or is having like a she they, which is or like she is like the cis, but is that the same type of experience as somebody who is singular they them like yourself?
Mhm.
Right? And because like to be misgendered means something a little more than somebody, and not it's not saying it's wrong, by the way.
Mhm.
Again, I keep on saying non-binary is valid no matter what, but if you identify as trans or not, but the idea is that there are some granularities that are starting to appear, because it's important to not have non-binary trans erasure either.
Mhm.
Because if there is a difference, and we need to be able to research that difference so we can
Mhm.
understand how to help the community as a whole.
Yeah.
So it's a little trepidatious to talk about those things. That's why I really don't talk about a lot of gender identity stuff on stream, because people can misinterpret. Like when two trans people talk about gender identity, it's a very different conversation than a trans person talking to a cis person about gender
Mhm.
identity. So a lot of things can be taken out of context.
Mhm.
So as trans creators, we have to make sure we're very careful on how we frame the arguments
Yeah.
about trans identity
I
and
was
just identity in general. Go ahead.
I was definitely thinking about that in terms of talking about gender socialization and how it can impact us. Because I was like, that can
Yeah,
be misused by people not in the community.
absolutely.
So I totally,
Absolutely.
totally hear you on that.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
I'll send you that study.
I'm
It's
looking forward
pretty
to it.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I get giddy when I think about survey research. So yeah, but yeah, so I'm very, very happy, and we need to continue that conversation on later.
Absolutely. I'm so excited we made this connection, and I will
I am
see
too.
you soon,
See
Josie.
you soon. Yeah, let's schedule something. All right.
Absolutely.
Much love. Bye.
Bye.